Could I lose money buying a home? Well, as we've seen, the answer is yes. But in the modern era, if you're holding onto your house for longer than 3 years, you are typically making money. The appreciation in an extreme seller's market has classically been 5%. I was asked this question the other day, if I buy a house right now, is there the potential that I could lose money? We're going to answer that today on this video. My name is Brett. I work with the Sarah Walsh real estate team. On this channel, we analyze everything Durham region real estate, and sometimes we venture out nationally to see what's going on with real estate across the country of Canada. So my editor says I need to cut this stuff down and get right into the video. So if you like this content, like and subscribe. It's right down there, and let's dive in. So when I was asked this question, I really had to give it some context, and I really like diving into charts and looking at historical past performance of housing in Canada. And I have data back to 180. So my strategy really was, in giving some clarity to these folks, was to look back and see past times from 1980 on when we had experienced a downturn in Canadian housing. So let's look at the first one right now. If you haven't noticed, I get professional when I'm on the small screen. Hat forward, no backwards, headphones on so I can hear myself. And let's get into the chart here. So this is average home prices annually across the Durham region in the province of Ontario. And if you look at the chart here, in 1989, we peaked at $186,018 for the average home in the Durham region. And as you can see by this line here, we traveled under this line, this peak here, for quite some time, and prices only recovering back up to that 186,000 level in 2001. So it was around 11, 12 years that you were actually holding on to losses. Say if you bought at the peak here, 11 years holding on to the losses. And at the bottom of the trough here in 1993, where average housing prices dropped to 136,377, you're looking at so holding on to that house, you were looking at a negative 26% drop at the bottom of the trough here. But if you had, diamond hands, not paper hands, and weren't forced to sell for some reason, you recovered in pricing going into 1986. So in that time, you would have had to stomach a 26% decrease in the price of the average home in the Durham region. But, if you're diamond hands like me and you're a Bitcoin holder, really, you're just used to, multiple 75% drawdowns in the life of your asset, right? But, it takes a certain level of conviction to do that type of stuff. And I realize that, a house is someone's biggest asset, typically. So it gets scary when you're buying in at a certain price and then you are looking at the value go down. Let's get into the second instance in recent memory where we've had a pretty significant dip in housing, although not quite as bad. And we are looking at 2017, where housing prices during that year peaked at 624,225, and that was the beginning of a run up in housing, at least in the Durham region. It's kind of when the Durham region came into its own and, not exactly matched the west end of the city, but there was a lot of people realizing that, hey, we can move out to Durham and we can pick up a house for a great price. And that's what you're looking at. It kind of pumped up our local sales market to a point where it's never really come down from there again. And what happened, they instituted some rate hiking at this time, interest rates going up just like they are now. But also there was the mortgage stress test that came into effect where you had to qualify at a rate that was typically higher than what you were paying for your actual mortgage interest rate, just so they knew you were good in case rates had to go up. Back to this now. So in 2017, the prices peaked at 624,000. And then you have the trough here, and we're looking at it annually. Some of these numbers, if you look at it quarterly or monthly, are going to be a little bit different, but we get the gist here. So In 2017, they peaked. Then in 2018, that was the bottom of the trough where they went down to 591,172. And then we start to tick up again here. And we'll talk about 2020 in just 1 second. That represents a minus 5% depreciation. And I remember Sarah was in the business at this time, and there were some people calling her saying like, oh, we purchased at a high price. What are we going to do? And then basically, this is an asset that's very illiquid. What you should do is you should hold on to this asset for the long term. And I mean, even people like Warren Buffett say about stocks that I think the average stock people roll over like every 6 months. Like the average length of time you hold a stock is 6 months, where, he says this type of thing for holding stocks. It's like, if you're not willing to hold it for 10 years, why would you even hold it for 10 minutes, right? So this should really apply to your family home. It's like, in this period, barring like, 1989 to 2001, but in the modern era, in the 2000s here, if you're holding on to your house for more than 3 years, like, you are making money in the form of appreciation. Okay, so now we're looking at today. So we saw a peak in pricing in February 2022 in the Durham region this is standard homes. So it's looking at the average. It's basically detached, semi-detached, condos, row houses, townhomes, everything just on an average, so we can match the other charts. But the average house was selling just over 1.2 million, and then started in the rate hikes in March. And we've had a precipitous drop here, similar to the 1989 to 2000s bottom of the trough drop of minus 26%. But this has just happened acutely in the last few months, basically, just because of the unprecedented speed and size of the rate hikes done by the Bank of Canada. We bottomed out here in July, which is typically a slow month, 908,000 on average, and we've been ticking up into September at 929,596, which I believe is just because people are withholding their inventory from the market. Even if they want to move, they're kind of saying, well, wait, and we'll probably see what happens, because there's a lot of uncertainty, so you can't really blame people in that regard. We went over a bunch of charts, and to recap, we suffered a near 26% drop from 1989 to 1993, and then started recovering, and only recovered in 2001. And then we had the next drop from 2017 to 2020, when we got the pandemic and prices just skyrocketed. We're not going to get into why right now, just because it's a massive question, and there's a lot of like competing opinions on either side of like what actually caused the run up. But to get back to my client's original question, could I lose money buying a home? Well, as we've seen, the answer is yes. If you lived in that period from 1989 and bought a house to 2001, or in that short period from 2017 to 2020, on paper, you had suffered a loss at that time. But in the modern era, if you're holding onto your house for longer than 3 years, you are typically making money. And, the appreciation in an extreme seller's market has classically been 5%. People who bought before the pandemic are looking at a huge increase in equity now. Really, what you need to ask yourself, are you confident that Canada is going to continue to be a good economy into the future, with opportunity for people to live and work in this country? If that is you, then, you should think about purchasing a home if it's something you want to own into the future. And, obviously we talk about the things all the time, like price this, price that, but it provides utility value and a level of security in that it's a roof over your head and it's something that you yourself own. If you're one of those major housing bears that, thinks that we're going back down to, 2010 levels or something like that, where we're going to see another precipitous, like 25 to 50% drop in housing, then no, obviously you shouldn't buy a house, because you're probably going to be quite stressed at that time. And, it's not going to be a good thing for you to do, especially if there's a prolonged period of time where you're going to have to ride out a paper loss, right? So when I say paper loss, what I mean is that you haven't sold your house or anything yet. You have your payment, you're making your payments. So maybe if you were to sell right then and there, you would suffer a loss. But if you're going to hold on to your house, and like I said again, you believe that Canada's a great place to live, you believe that home prices will recover, then it's really a no-brainer in my mind. That is a time where I would at least want to own my own principal residence. All right, so before I keep rambling on, I'm going to cut this video off. What I'm going to ask you guys is to like and subscribe. Once we get to 100 subscribers, we will be doing a giveaway for one of our lucky subscribers. Make sure you're public on there so we can actually see your name, because it's only going to be the people who are public that will be able to get a prize, because otherwise, how are we going to get a hold of you? All right, that's it from me. That's it for this video on the Sarah Walsh Real Estate Team channel, and I'm out. See ya.